Get one more counselor on. Okay, welcome members of the public, welcome members of council to this council public meeting on Wednesday, November 17th. I will begin by reading a rather likely public notice that we're required to read, so bear with me. Due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, city facilities will not be open to the public to attend council and committee meetings. The public can observe meetings of council and committees by viewing the live stream of the open session part of these meetings, which can be accessed on the city's website. So with regards to public comments, the public may submit written correspondence regarding agenda matters by email to clerks@richmondhill.ca, and written correspondence must be submitted by 12 noon on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be provided to all members of council, considered as public information and noted in the public record. So the public may also appear as an electronic delegation by video conference or by telephone. Applications to appear as an electronic delegation must be submitted by 12 noon on the day of the meeting by email to clerks@richmondhill.ca. I know there's another notice I'm required to read for public hearings. Oh, here it is, the public hearing statement. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submission to the city of Richmond Hill in respect of a proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, or plan of subdivision or condominium, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the city council to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Okay, so we're still waiting on one councillor to officially have a quorum. I'll describe how the meeting will transpire. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to hear comments regarding the proposed planning applications. Our planning staff will first provide an overview and describe the application, and a representative for the property owner or the applicant will then have the opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes, followed by individuals who have registered to appear as a delegation. Staff have advised tonight that there are no members of the public registered to speak to tonight's applications. As I mentioned, I've received regrets from Regional and Local Councillor Pirelli and from Councillor Silovitz. So we are waiting on one more councillor. We need 5 members of council in order to call this meeting to order. So we'll just give it a few minutes. Ms. Black allows us up to 20 minutes to establish quorum. I believe, Mr. Clerk, we have
30 minutes.
30 minutes we have. So thank you for your patience, representatives of the applicant. Oh, here we go. Just in time, it looks like Councillor Munch is signing into the meeting. There we are. Okay, Councillor Munch, welcome. You're the 5th member of council. Therefore, we do have a quorum. We have Councillor Greg Barrows attending by telephone this evening. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. And we start by looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Councillors Liu and Councillor Chan. All in favor? Okay. You can just say yes or no, Councillor Barrows on the phone there.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, with that, it's unanimous. We have an adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest in any items before us tonight? I see none. So we go right into our scheduled business. Our first item, 3.1, is a request for comments on an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision submitted by Leslie Richmond Developments Limited for 11491 Leslie Street. And from From our city planning staff, we have Sandra DeMaria to present this application to us. Go ahead, Ms. DeMaria.
Good evening, Acting Mayor DePaula, Council, and members of the public. The first public meeting item this evening involves proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications to permit a medium-density residential development on the lands municipally known as 11491 Leslie Street. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located on the east side of Leslie Street, south of 19th Avenue and north of Elgin Mills Road East, within the North Leslie Secondary Plan area. The lands have a total lot area of 0.355 hectares or 0.877 acres with 60.98 meters or 200 feet of frontage on Leslie Street and currently accommodate a kennel known as the Pet Chateau, which will cease operation to facilitate the applicant's development proposal. The lands abut an existing rural residential use at the corner of 19th Avenue and Leslie Street to the north, Leslie Street to the west, and a townhouse development block within the applicant's draft approved plan of subdivision to the south and east. Next slide, please. The applications seek approval of a medium density residential development comprised of 17 townhouse dwelling units on a private condominium road. The proposed condominium road is intended to be an extension of a proposed private road within the adjacent townhouse development proposal on Block 2 of draft approved plan of subdivision 19T 15007 to the east, which is also owned by the applicant. Next slide, please. The applicant's official plan amendment proposes to redesignate its land holdings from employment corridor to medium density residential in order to facilitate the proposed development. The applicant is also seeking approval of a related zoning bylaw amendment application to rezone its land holdings from agricultural A1 zone to multiple residential 4 RM4 zone under bylaw 55-15 as amended, which would permit a variety of townhouse dwelling unit types, quadruplex dwellings, apartment dwellings, home occupations, private home daycare, apartment retail stores, day nurseries, and senior citizen dwellings, retirement residences, and long-term care facilities. The applicant is also proposing to include semi-detached and live-work units as additional permitted uses and will require site-specific development standards to facilitate the proposed development. Staff have circulated the applications to internal departments and external agencies for review and comment. The purpose of this report is to provide council and the public with an overview of the applicant's development proposal and has been structured for information purposes only, with the recommendation that all comments be referred back to staff for consideration. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Maria. So we have just one person registered to speak to this, and it's actually on behalf of the applicant, Mark McConville from Humphreys Planning Group, Inc.
Through you, Acting Mayor, sir, we've lost quorum. Councillor Munch is.
Okay, so Councillor Munch, if you're you've got to keep your screen on for us, Councillor Munch. If your screen goes off, we lose quorum. So, thank you. Okay, so we have reestablished quorum. Mr. McConville, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm just sharing my screen here.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes to address us.
Thank you, and thanks to staff for that excellent presentation. I'll try not to repeat information here. In terms of site location and context, actually, the site is amongst 5 approved draft plans of subdivision, which you can see on the screen here. And as part of that, there's a variety of parks and schools that will be developed in the future as part of those plans of subdivision. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention. In terms of the development proposal, it is for the 17 townhouse units. And there was discussion about the additional permission for semi-detached unit. And that's because there's a sliver of a block to the north there, where you can see the two semi-detached units. which is why we added that permission. As discussed, this is a block adjacent to the larger Leslie Richmond planned subdivision. So the intention is to develop it with a similar townhouse product. Quickly touching on the provincial policy framework here, the PPS and growth plan conforms to both documents by optimizing land use and resources within a settlement area, and by achieving a range and mix of housing options for the area. In the Region of York official plan, latest consolidation 2020, we'd like to note that the lands are designated urban area and they are not located within York Region's strategic employment lands designation. So they aren't considered employment lands by the region. Within the North Leslie secondary plan, the current designation is employment corridor. And as such, we are proposing an official plan amendment to redesignate to medium density residential to permit the townhouse units. The proposed redesignation from our perspective is appropriate, as the site is not within a PZ of the province, a provincially significant employment zone of the province, or it is neither designated strategic employment area by York Region. The site lacks visibility and adequate access from Leslie Street, as the proposed grade difference would be approximately 2 to 3 meters higher than Leslie Street. The redesignation that we're proposing would also allow for the possibility of live work units along Leslie Street, which would present a possibility for employment uses within the live work units on the ground floor, and then residential uses above. So we are proposing that in our draft zoning bylaw. So the proposed zoning change is from the current agricultural zone in bylaw 2325-68, bringing it into bylaw 5515, which is the area specific bylaw for North Leslie, to a multiple residential 4 special zone with the added exceptions and the permissions for semi-detached dwellings, back-to-back dwellings, and live work units. A number of supporting technical reports and studies have been prepared as part of these applications, including the draft official plan amendment, the draft zoning bylaw amendment, planning justification report, a tree inventory preservation plan and arborist report, the draft plan of subdivision, and site plan and elevations. Thank you for your time, and I'm pleased to answer any questions from council or the public.
Sorry, we're on mute.
Oh, okay. I thank you, Mr. McConville. I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you for your comments. As I said earlier, there isn't anyone from the public register to speak to this. So I'll turn it over to the man in charge of everything on Leslie, north of 16th anyways, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you staff and the applicant for their presentation. As staff mentioned, this used to be a pet chateau. I think everybody in council is familiar with this. And I think it makes sense to be integrated into the adjacent townhouses development. Looking at the report, I don't have any big issue on this application, and I rely on staff to conduct a comprehensive zoning review to address all area of non-compliances. I can see the density is a little bit over, but not very excessive. I'm not too worried about that. So I'm more than happy to move that all recommendations refer back to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. Sir, is there a councillor willing to second that? And Is Counselor Munch on the screen? I don't see him. Oh, we've got Counselor West though. You saved our quorum. Thanks. Counselor West is willing to second this. So we've maintained quorum. We do have 5 members of council because Counselor Barrows does count being on the phone. So we've got a mover and a seconder for the comments being referred back to our staff on this application. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that carries unanimously.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, we move to item 3.2 on our agenda. This one is a request for comments on the zoning bylaw application submitted by Mina Maru from 551 and 561 16th Avenue. So on behalf of our staff, we have Caitlin Graham. Ms. Graham, you're going to introduce this to us. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mayor, members of council, and the public. The second public meeting tonight involves a proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Land is known as 551 by 561 16th Avenue. Next slide, please.
Ms. Graham, just your audio seems to be having a problem.
Apologies, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but it's extremely muffled, and
I'm sorry.
maybe if you could adjust your settings.
Can you hear me now? Is that clear?
It's still there's still a real problem with your audio. Mr. Clerk, do you have a suggestion?
Through the acting mayor, Caitlin, if you're able to join by phone, it's probably your sound card on your laptop that's the problem. It's not you specifically, it's your computer. So if you're able to join by phone, it should be in your invitation with the participant ID, a webinar ID, and a password. We should be able to, it'll clear up your sound that way. And let me, I will try and find that for you right now by.
Apologies, give me a moment.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we're just giving Ms. Graham a moment to call in to the meeting, into the clerk. Ms. Graham, we can't understand you at all now. If you are trying to speak to us.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Oh, well, we can hear you, but there's this very strange effect with your audio. Are you trying to call in? Are you calling in the number that was emailed? Okay. The clerk's indicated that Ms. Graham is trying to call in. Should be connected shortly.
There you go. Yeah.
There we go.
Mr. Chair, it's Council. Mr.
Councilor
Chair,
Barrows?
it's Councilor Barrows.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that? I was going to say, Mr. Chair, is it fair to say that we've got the report in front of us and we don't need someone to read it to us, and we could move on to the delegate?
Well, I think Ms. Graham has connected now by phone. Ms. Graham, are you there?
I am here, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we can hear you now. So go ahead with your presentation. And I think you'll have to shut your computer off so there isn't feedback?
No.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. Good evening, members of council and the public. The second public meeting tonight involves the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application for the lands municipally known as 551 and 561 16th Avenue. Next slide, please. The subject properties are located on the south side of 16th Avenue between Yonge Street and Bayview Avenue with a total site area of 0.44 hectares. The lands are comprised of 2 lots, each of which currently support a single detached dwelling. Uses surrounding the property include residential uses to the north, east, and south, and a physiotherapy clinic to the west. The lands are designated neighborhood and are identified as being located within a priority infill area in the city's official plan. Lands designated neighborhood are generally characterized by low-density residential areas and include permissions for both low and medium-density residential uses, subject to specific compatibility criteria. With respect to zoning, the lands are currently zoned Special Residential 1, SR1 zone, and Low Density Residential 6, R6 zone, under Zoning Bylaw 255-96 as amended. Next slide, please. The applicant is seeking to rezone the lands to facilitate the construction of 14 semi-detached units and 2 single-detached dwellings under the Low Density Residential 6, R6 zone of Bylaw 255-96 with site-specific exceptions. Staff have circulated the applications to internal departments and external agencies for review and comment, and at this time, several of those comments do remain outstanding. The purpose of tonight's report is to provide council and the public with an overview of the applicant's development proposal and has been structured for information purposes with the recommendation that all comments be referred back to staff for consideration. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Graham. Now we go to the representative of the applicant. Second, yeah, it's Deborah Alexander from Alexander Planning on behalf of the applicant. Ms. Alexander, go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes to address council.
Thank you, Acting Mayor DiPaolo. Are you able to hear me just fine?
Perfectly, yes.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Wonderful. Okay, as you know, my name is Deb Alexander with Alexander Planning. I represent Mina Maru, the owner of the property at 551 and 561 16th Avenue. Next slide, please. This application for zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted to permit the development of 14 semi-detached homes on the existing street frontages of 16th Avenue and Fern Avenue. The plan also depicts a portion of the property in the southwest corner, which is set aside for the future development of 2 additional single detached homes. Next slide, please. Thank you. The future development of the proposed single detached units can't occur until a backlot infill plan of subdivision proceeds to the point where the infill public street extending west from Fern Avenue is constructed. That infill road is proposed to be constructed as part of the adjacent plan of subdivision. It's outlined in blue on this slide. Next slide, please. This conceptual block plan shows how the development will fit into its surroundings. We note that staff have requested that the proposed lots fronting on 16th Avenue be made a bit deeper and the setback of the proposed homes on 16th Avenue be increased to better reflect the existing streetscape on 16th Avenue. I've discussed these changes with my client. She has absolutely no objections, so those changes will be reflected in our next submission. Next slide, please. This slide depicts the conceptual siting of 1 pair of semi-detached units on Fern Avenue. Although the development standards proposed in the draft bylaw are similar to standards that are used or requested by other developments elsewhere in this block, additional discussion with staff will, of course, be undertaken once we have the circulation comments in our hands. Next slide, please. So the proposed units have been designed in a very modern format, similar to homes found elsewhere in the town. The example that the owner really liked was this one up on Pemberton, and she would like these units to look like the Pemberton unit. Siting elevations and floor plans remain conceptual at this time. They will be finalized once we have all of our comments. I trust this information provides a good overview of the project and responds to some of the questions which council and members of the public might have. We look forward to continuing to work with staff as this application proceeds through the approvals process. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Thank you. So That concludes the members of the public that are speaking to us tonight. So it comes back to the ward councillor, Councillor Chan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, our staff and Ms. Alexander, presentation on behalf of the applicant. This report, actually staff, looks to me is very preliminary, but it does set up the framework, such as on page 8, what we'll be looking at. There was one particular information meeting that was held. There was one participant from the public, and it was also mentioned about in the report. And as Alexander was mentioning about that, one of the slides that showed this is not just one particular application in this area, this is also adjacent. So that's something actually leads me to, before I move the motion, as recommended to Mr. Chair, through you, perhaps that to staff through you. So since the concept plan, including the new proposed road and everything, would have to be only happening, I gather, if also the adjacent development, which was indicated, would be approved, assuming that this one will be approved. Would that be actually any particular kind of dependency on each other's application adjacent to each other? Through you, Mr. Chair, to the staff.
I hope you caught that, Mr. Galanis. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. The dependency really focuses on the two lots, as Ms. Alexander spoke to, that can't be developed without that abutting development to the south and the west. The rest of the property that her applicant owns can proceed on its own, but there may be some interdependencies specifically with those two lots. So that's where the focus is.
Right. I think it's fair to say that there has been plans not only on this lot, but on this particular block for some infill development. So this is not something of a surprise and in the neighborhood, so to speak. I just want to raise the particular comment and consider as a concern. And it was relating to the over 100 number trees that might have to be removed. So certainly that is an issue of concern. Now, I do see that, particularly from staff report was saying on page 7, that means that the applicant required to compensate for the loss of trees and so on. Now, I also want to be absolutely clear on page 7 on the paragraph under park and natural heritage planning as relation to tree. So not only the over 100 trees, if they have to be removed at all, have to be replaced and compensated by the applicant, but there's also a reference to that required consent of neighboring landowners. So the question through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, would that be a condition we need to have confirmation from the applicant before anything? The staff will come back with recommendation, assuming it's recommending for approval. That's the consent from the neighboring landowners.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yes, through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, that will be a requirement as part of the approval, that the applicant will have to work with abutting landowners to review any trees that straddle the property line or will be affected by the construction. It's a standard requirement through our approval process.
Yeah. So I just want to be absolutely clear. There's two concerns I raised. Well, certainly need confirmation. The third part also on that paragraph, it's not a big paragraph, but another third point is that there will be a per lot street tree levy. So those trees that would be put on later on would be in addition to the over 100 trees to be compensated. Just want to get confirmation from staff through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, yes, that will be, what happens is they'll do an overall review of the trees that are to be removed, and the street trees will be in addition to the trees that are going to be removed. Again, that's standard practice as part of the approval process.
Right. And the last question is really not from the city, but from the region, as shown on page 8. Indicated the region has concern about the driveway access through 16th Avenue. wasn't that right in, right out, or is it something more than that? Through you, Mr. Chair, to the staff. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah,
Glennis?
through you, Mr. Acting,
Glennis?
through you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yes, that concern was brought up initially by the region at the pre-submission meeting. There is a requirement here that the region is looking to potentially widen 16th Avenue in the future, and they're trying to limit the amount of individual driveway accesses onto that widened street. So they're going to be working with municipal staff and the applicant to see what can be done to limit those access points. But right now, we don't have a definitive response from the region.
Okay, fair enough. And I have no further comments. And yes, I moved the motion already. Thank you for answering the question from our staff, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for me to ask those questions and move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Chan. I think Councillor West is indicating he's willing to second the motion. Did you want to speak as well, or?
No.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments regarding this application from council members? Okay, so we've got a motion to receive all comments from tonight's meeting from Councillor Chan, seconded by Councillor West. All in favor?
Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Barros. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you.
And
Motion to adjourn?
okay, thank you, Councillor Barros. A seconder? Councillor West. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Okay.